The mimosa was good. Freshly squeezed orange juice, decent champagne, the kind of brunch where the restaurant brings the bottles to your table. My Aunt Patricia had chosen the place. Upscale enough to impress, public enough to perform. The long table seated 18 of us. Aunts, uncles, cousins, my parents at the far end avoiding eye contact with me. It's just so sad, Patricia continued, her voice carrying that particular tone of concern that's really schadenfreude wearing a compassionate mask. 5 years trying to make that little boutique work. Sometimes you have to accept your limitations. My cousin Jennifer touched my hand. It's okay to admit defeat, Vanessa. Not everyone's cut out for business. I cut into my eggs Benedict. The hollandaise was perfectly emulsified, silky and rich. The poached eggs here are excellent, I said. Still in denial, my mother murmured to my father. Loud enough for me to hear. Always loud enough for me to hear. The story Patricia had been telling for 6 months. My boutique was failing, hemorrhaging money, about to close. She'd seen the going out of business signs, heard from sources that I was 3 months behind on rent, watched me desperately, trying to move inventory at deep discounts. None of it was true. But Patricia dealt in narratives, not facts. What was true? I'd opened a second location. The going out of business signs were at the old space. The deep discounts were a clearance sale before the move. The sources were her own wishful thinking reflected back at her. What was also true? I'd just closed on a commercial property portfolio. 4 buildings in the downtown district. One of them housed Patricia's precious antique store, the business she'd inherited from our grandmother, the one she'd been using as evidence of her superiority over me for my entire adult life. My phone buzzed. Property management company. Closing documents signed. Keys transferred. Tenants will be notified within the hour. I set the phone down and took another bite. The restaurant's noise. Silverware on porcelain, overlapping conversations, the espresso machine's hiss, created a comfortable buffer. I tried to warn you, Patricia was saying now, addressing the table but performing for me. I told her retail was dying. I told her she didn't have the experience. But some people need to learn through failure. Uncle James nodded thoughtfully. What will you do now, Vanessa? I know a few companies hiring. Entry-level but stable. I'm sure Patricia could give you a job, Aunt Marie offered. You could learn from someone who actually knows how to run a business. Patricia's smile was magnanimous. I'd consider it. Minimum wage to start, of course. Maybe stockroom work. Nothing customer-facing until you learn professionalism. For 3 years I'd been the family embarrassment. Patricia made sure of it. Every gathering, every holiday, every chance she got. My boutique was small-time, my ambitions were cute, my financial decisions were reckless. He had proof. He always had proof. Unnamed sources, vague observations, the knowing look of someone who'd inherited success rather than built it. What she didn't know, I'd started as a pop-up shop in a farmer's market. Grew to a small storefront. Then a bigger one. Then 4. Revenue last year, $2.4 million. Net profit, $380,000. This year tracking 30% higher. What she really didn't know, I'd been quietly acquiring real estate. Started with the building that housed my flagship store. Then 2 more retail properties. Then last month, made an offer on a portfolio that included prime downtown locations. One of those locations, 847 Morrison Street. Patricia's antique store occupied the ground floor. She'd been a tenant for 18 years. Her rent, $3,200 monthly, locked in from 2006, criminally below market rate. Current market rent for that space, $8,500 monthly. Patricia's phone rang. She glanced at the screen, frowned slightly. Excuse me, this is my landlord. Probably about the lease renewal. She answered with her business voice, the one that added an extra layer of professional authority. Patricia Patterson speaking. The table continued eating. I watched her face. Yes, this is she. Pause. Her eyebrows drew together. I'm sorry, what? The conversations around us didn't stop, but something in her voice made people glance up. That's impossible, Patricia said. Her free hand gripped the edge of the table. I have a lease. Through 2026. I took a sip of mimosa. The bubbles felt celebratory. Miss Patterson, this is your landlord, or rather your former landlord, the voice was saying. loud enough that I could hear it from 3 seats away. Property manager's voice carries when delivering news like this. Miss Chin purchased the property this morning. The sale was finalized an hour ago. She's requested a meeting with all tenants to discuss lease renewals. The table went quiet. Not all at once. Like dominoes. The people nearest Patricia first, then the ripples spreading outward as they registered her expression. Chin. Patricia's voice had climbed half an octave. What Chin? Vanessa Chin. The new owner of 847 Morrison Street and 3 adjacent properties in the downtown district. 16 faces turned toward me. I was examining a strawberry on my plate, considering whether to eat it or save it for last. There must be a mistake, Patricia said. But her voice had lost its certainty. No mistake, Miss Patterson. Miss Chen's offer was accepted 3 weeks ago. Closing occurred this morning at 9:15. You'll receive official notification via registered mail, but she asked me to call personally to schedule a meeting regarding your lease status. My lease is legally binding. Your lease is month to month, Miss Patterson. It converted in 2020 when you declined the 5-year renewal option. As I'm sure you recall. I did recall. Patricia had bragged about it at Christmas 2019. Why lock myself in when the owner's desperate to keep tenants? I can negotiate better terms whenever I want. She'd been playing chicken with a landlord who died 6 months later. The estate had been in probate for years. No one pushing for rent increases. No one managing the property properly. Patricia had been coasting on an 18-year-old lease rate, crowing about her business acumen while paying a fraction of market value. The meeting is scheduled for Tuesday at 2 p.m., the property manager continued. Miss Chin would like to discuss rent adjustment to current market rates. She's prepared to offer a new 3-year lease at $8,500 monthly, which is actually below the $9,200 market average for that square footage and location. Patricia's face had gone from flushed to pale to a grayish color I'd never seen on human skin before. $8,500? I pay $3,200. Yes, ma'am. Which is why Miss Chin considers her offer generous. The previous owner's estate significantly undervalued the property. Miss Chin is correcting that across all 4 buildings she acquired. My mother found her voice first. Vanessa. Is this true? I finished the strawberry. The Eggs Benedict really is exceptional. I should ask for the recipe. You bought Patricia's building? Uncle James was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. 4 buildings, I corrected. The Morrison Street portfolio. Patricia's is one of 12 commercial tenants across the properties. I'm meeting with all of them Tuesday to discuss lease renewals at current market rates. Patricia ended the call. Set her phone down with exaggerated care as if it might explode. You can't do this. I can actually. That's what ownership means. This is revenge. Because you what? I met her eyes for the first time all brunch. Because you've spent 3 years telling everyone my business is failing? Because you've offered me minimum wage jobs in front of the family? Because you've used your inherited antique store as evidence that you're a superior businessperson. The table had gone completely silent. Even the restaurant noise seemed muted now, as if the universe itself was leaning in. I did inherit the store, Patricia said. But I grew it. I made it successful. You've had the same revenue for 8 years, I said quietly. I pulled the commercial tenant disclosure statements. That's public record, by the way. Your gross revenue, $340,000 annually. Your expenses minus rent, roughly $285,000. You net about $55,000 a year. And you've been doing that on $3,200 monthly rent in a space that should cost $8,500. How dare you? The math is simple. At market rate rent, your net profit becomes negative $8,000 annually. You've been operating a failing business propped up by below-market rent for nearly 2 decades. The only reason you're still open is because the previous landlord didn't care enough to raise your rent to what the space is actually worth. Cousin Jennifer had her phone out. Calculating. That's $63,600 in additional annual rent. If she's only netting $55,000. She's operating at a loss of $8,600 annually at market rates, I confirmed. Which means she'd need to either increase revenue by at least 20%, Cut costs significantly or close. My father leaned back in his chair. You planned this. I purchased a commercial property portfolio that made financial sense. Patricia being a tenant was a bonus. Not the goal, but certainly not a deterrent. The gambler's fallacy. Patricia had been playing a game she thought she was winning. Every time she didn't get a rent increase, she believed it proved her negotiation skills, her business savvy, her superiority. She kept doubling down on the belief that her luck would continue forever. But luck isn't strategy. And eventually the house always wins. I won't pay $8,500, Patricia declared. I'll fight this. I'll get a lawyer. You should absolutely get a lawyer, I agreed. They'll tell you that month-to-month leases can be terminated with 30 days' notice. They'll tell you that market rate adjustments are legal. They'll tell you that I'm actually offering you below market rate at $8,500. Or you could move out, Uncle James said slowly. He was doing math on his napkin. Find a cheaper location. Patricia's jaw tightened. And give her the satisfaction? The satisfaction is already complete, I said. You've built a narrative about my failure for 3 years. You've positioned yourself as the successful one, the business expert, the family's example of entrepreneurship. You did it at every gathering, every phone call, every chance you got. I pulled out my tablet, opened my property management app, the one that showed all 4 buildings, all 12 tenants, all the financials. Turned it so the table could see. Here's what success actually looks like for commercial properties. Total purchase price, $4.2 million. Financed with 20% down, $840,000 cash. Monthly rental income at current below market rates, $47,000. Monthly expenses including mortgages, taxes, insurance, management, $31,000. Net monthly cash flow, $16,000. Annual net, $192,000. I swiped to the next screen. Here's my retail business. 4 locations. Annual revenue, $2.4 million. Annual net profit, $380,000. I own 2 of the buildings that house my stores. I pay myself a salary of $85,000. The rest reinvests. Another swipe. Here's my personal real estate. My condo purchased 2019. Current value, $580,000. Mortgage balance, $240,000. Equity, $340,000. I also own a small rental property, a duplex. Monthly rent, $3,400. Monthly costs, $1,900. Net, $1,500 monthly. I set the tablet down. Total monthly net income from all sources, approximately $38,000. Annual, $456,000. But please tell me again about my failed boutique. My mother was staring at the tablet like it contained nuclear launch codes. Where did you get that kind of money? I earned it. 5 years of 70-hour weeks. 5 years of every dollar reinvested. 5 years of saying no to vacations, new cars, eating out, anything that wasn't building wealth. 5 years of you telling people I was failing while I was actually building an empire. Patricia's hands were shaking. This is cruel. What's cruel is making someone feel worthless for entertainment. What's cruel is offering them minimum wage stockroom jobs at family brunches. What's cruel is spinning narratives about their failures to make yourself feel superior. I pulled up my email. Showed her the meeting invitation. Tuesday, 2 p.m. My office. The building I own at 1240 Commerce Street. You, me, and my property attorney. We'll discuss your options. Accept the new lease at $8,500 monthly with a 3-year term. Negotiate a transition period. I'll give you 6 months at $5,500 to adjust your business model. Or terminate the lease with 60 days notice instead of the legally required 30. I'm being generous with the timeline. And if I refuse? Then I invoke the 30-day clause. And you're out by mid-March with no transition period. Uncle James cleared his throat. Vanessa. This is family. Family, I repeated. For 3 years this family has listened to Patricia tell stories about my failures. For 3 years, this family has nodded sympathetically while she offered me entry-level jobs. For 3 years, not one person at this table has asked me how business was actually going. You took her word as truth. I looked around the table. 16 faces. Some shocked. Some calculating. Some, like my parents, somewhere between embarrassed and defensive. I'm not punishing Patricia for being family, I said. I'm correcting a business relationship to market standards. If she can afford $8,500 monthly rent, we'll have a good tenant-landlord relationship. If she can't, she should find space that fits her actual business model. That's not revenge. That's capitalism. Patricia stood abruptly. Her chair scraped against the floor. I need air. She left. My mother followed. Then Aunt Marie. The table fractured into whispered conversations. Jennifer was still staring at her phone. You own 4 buildings. I do. And you never said anything. Why would I? So Patricia could claim I was bragging? So my parents could ask for loans? So the family could have opinions about how I should run my businesses? I shook my head. Silence was strategic. Let them believe their narrative. Meanwhile, build the reality. 3 days later, Patricia accepted the 6-month transition at $5,500. She'd need the time to cut costs or close. Her lawyer had confirmed. I was being more generous than legally required. 6 months after that, she didn't renew. Couldn't make the numbers work. The antique store closed. She got a job managing someone else's store. Salary, $45,000 annually. My parents sent a carefully worded email asking if we could discuss my real estate holdings over dinner. I declined. We could discuss whatever they wanted at the next family gathering with everyone present. Public conversations only now. The building at 847 Morrison Street now houses one of my boutique locations. Revenue in that space, $680,000 annually. Net profit after market rate rent to myself, $140,000. I still go to family brunches. I still order the eggs Benedict. I still listen to the conversations around me. But now when someone asks how business is going, I smile and say, excellent, thank you for asking. And I mean it. The people who made me feel small are living smaller. They lost the narrative, the moral high ground, and their inflated sense of superiority. Meanwhile, I'm having Tuesday meetings with my property manager, reviewing lease renewals and planning acquisition number 5. They thought they were watching me fail. Turns out they were just proving they never knew how to recognize success.